So I'm really pleased to have Professor INACH Krasteva join us from Bulgaria. We're right here at the INACH Summit at the moment. Anna, can you tell our listeners just a little bit of your own biography?
Anna Krasteva, Professor of Political Sciences and Migration Studies at the New Bulgarian University, where I created the first and the most prestigious and visible migration center in my country, CERMES, Center for European Refugees, Migration and Ethnic Studies. And I'm also Doctor Honoris Causa of University of Lille in France, with a lot of publications and projects and teaching on migration, politics, technologies, civic activism, populism, post-democracy.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anna. It's wonderful to have you on Zooming In on Hate. So I'd just like to go straight into the nub of a wonderful presentation we just heard here in Sofia. You talked about how tech and the intersectionality with politics has changed and how it's evolving in front of our eyes really at the moment. Can you tell us a little bit about your thesis on it?
Probably a decade ago, an international team published a book. I organized a conference and we published a book both in France and in Bulgaria with the title Digital Citizen. In French it was e-citoyenneté, in Bulgarian Digital Citizen. So we started this reflection on the intersection, new technologies in politics and changes in society, not recently, but really, I would say at the beginning also of internet, the new technologies, and I could compare really and to identify two quite different periods in the reflection on this intersection. We were much more positive, full of hope, theoretical and civic and political. In the initial period, and to summarize, let's say, the main message of this period, I'll start with a quotation from a very famous French author, Dominique Vulton, who analyzed exactly, let's say, this link. He said that every technological revolution leads to a political and social big change. He said the printing machine resulted in the Reformation. Radio and TV had as an expression the mass democracy. He said, what is the political project of the internet revolution? He asked the question, he did not, let's say, provide the answer. And myself with this international group of scholars, we reflected on that. And my answer at that time was internet revolution leads to the digital citizen. I saw a lot of potential for intensifying activism on social media, on the different platforms, developing the initial spirit of the new technologies. So the new technologies were born with a hacker spirit. They wanted to be an alternative to the status quo. There is a very famous manifesto, even two of them, and they claim we are not from your world, we want to build a new world of justice, of equality, of hope, of active citizens, etc., etc. It was a very strong citizens' spirit of the beginning of the internet itself and the information and communication technologies. And today we are here at a conference on hate and on digital hate, and this conference is not an exception. It is exemplary of the new trend when we see that technologies are more and more used, let's say, for symbolic violence, and even not only symbolic. I gave, let's say, the example of Modi, Indian leader, whom we know a little bit less in Europe, with a very strong digital campaign, aggressive digital campaign. He has the so-called digital army, and anti-Muslims, anti-political opponents, and the results are disastrous, so that there is a huge polarization. I'm back from IPSA Congress in Seoul, and I had to discuss a paper on the polarization in the Indian society, and this spirit of polarization was brought even in the academic let's say, venue of a World Congress of Political Sciences, but also communal violence, etc. So this is to illustrate that the phenomena are not only Western, but they are global, of the use of information technologies for hate, for violence. Of course, let's say they are, they are visible and invisible ways of the use of technologies, let's say, for hate. I'll take a few examples to illustrate. For instance, there is a kind of polyphony. Even when we have a classic media, they are more and more already in digital forms, but solid media, analytical ones, with a good moderation, which do not allow, let's say, hate on their publications, etc. But they do allow, let's say, comments after the articles. And there is a huge discrepancy between a more moderate analytical tone and style of the articles and a lot of hate in the comments. And the question, and we still need, let's say, to dig, to go deeper, to answer, is it a deliberate strategy of the media, let's say, to introduce hate, let's say, from a hidden, let's say, invisible, let's say, part, or it just happens, let's say, this way? So that what is really true is that there is a lot of hate, even, let's say, when the media are much more moderate. Another phenomena is this blurring of the distinction between real media, moderated with real journalists, etc., and fake media. I mentioned in my presentation there are studies on that, really fake platforms who play with the names of real media, and they put Orgo, so Orgo.net or something like that, pretend, let's say, to be a variety of real media, and who prepare the public on sensitive issues. For instance, migration is such an issue, and they publish they are fake, but a lot of information on migration in different countries, UK, France, etc. And one moment there is an extreme right politician who come with a very provocative, let's say, appeal, etc., and a huge mobilization happens in the real life. So that fake media, but real life migration, or they could be anti-LGBT, etc. So these are new forms, and the public is not aware, so that also the studies are relatively recent to identify those mechanisms, and still there is work to be done, let's say, to inform the public. Another classic example, but I have, let's say, to mention, is this transformation of Twitter into X. And it did not happen overnight. It did not happen the day when, let's say, a new owner came. It happened as a gradual process with a lot of steps and deliberate strategies, let's say, to transform the platform into the venue of extremist discourses. First, the reinstallment of profiles which have been banned by Twitter before. Second, let's say, to fire, to dismiss counsel for trust, etc. Third step, to introduce the so-called paid verification that extremist providers of content could ask and could pay quite a high price, but to get, let's say, this verification label, which brings them legitimacy, etc. So that deliberate strategy to transform a media, a social media, which used to be very much used. Just to give you an example of a scholar, it was not my favorite, let's say, media, but I joined because a lot of international organizations, international political science organization, IMISCO, the biggest network on migration studies, etc., they were exactly on Twitter. And so I joined, let's say, because it was, let's say, part of my community. And now, now there is, of course, the opposite process that we are living. But this is again paradoxical. We, let's say, more liberal intellectuals, we are living, which means that it is a kind of protest. Of course, it is not a kind, it is a protest on this really hate development of the platform. But the ambiguous result is that we completely left it, let's say, to the extremist voices. And so the huge challenge today is that, opposite to our beliefs decade or more ago, that internet will be used for diversifying, intensifying, inventive activism, it is more used, let's say, for hate. So that there is a huge disbalance between civic internet and hate internet. And the liberal community or activist community, citizens networks, still need to find a creative answer, let's say, to this balance.
Anna, thanks. Sobering conversation, but it is our reality, and good for us to hear it in such clear terms. Thank you so much for joining us on Zooming In on Hate.
Thank you for the invitation.